Famous actress's car broke down, only to be fixed by her biggest fan. Eli traced the frayed edge of the poster with a greasy thumb. Sienna Ray, circa 2008. Her breakthrough indie role. The film was called Dust Devil, a gritty little drama where she played a runaway who hot-wired classic cars. It was the role that made him a fan for life. Not the big-budget space operas or the romantic comedies that came later. This one. The one where she had motor oil on her cheek and a universe of defiance in her eyes. His garage was a shrine to her career, a timeline told in glossy paper. From Dust Devil pinned over his main workbench, her filmography snaked around the walls, each poster lovingly preserved, a silent testament to a life lived on screen. For him, they were not just decorations. They were reminders. Reminders that even in a world of slick, computer-designed engines and disposable parts, something raw and authentic could still exist. A wrench slipped from his grasp, clattering onto the concrete floor. He sighed, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a dark smear. Business was slow. The bills were not. Another month of just scraping by, of fixing rusted-out tractors and worn-down family sedans. His dream of opening a high-end restoration shop, a place for the classics, felt as distant as the Hollywood Hills themselves. He looked back at the poster. In it, she was leaning against a '69 Mustang, a ghost of a smile on her face. To Eli, that was the real Sienna Ray. The one before the global fame, the red carpets, the blinding flash of cameras. The artist. That was the Sienna he knew. The one taped to his wall. A sound from outside shattered his quiet reverence. It was a cough. A painful, sputtering, mechanical cough, followed by a wheezing death rattle. Eli's head snapped up. It sounded expensive. Very expensive. And very broken. He peered through the grime-streaked window of the bay door. A low-slung, impossibly sleek silver sports car, something European and wildly out of place in his rural corner of the world, had coasted to a stop just past his driveway. Steam billowed from under its hood. Eli's heart did a little two-step. An engine like that could be a challenge. It could also mean a payday that would cover next month's rent, and then some. He grabbed a rag and headed outside, already running diagnostics in his head. The driver's side door opened. A slender leg emerged, followed by the kind of sunglasses that cost more than his entire toolbox. The woman who stood up was tall, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, and she pulled the sunglasses from her face with an air of profound irritation. Eli's feet stopped moving. His brain stopped working. The world tilted on its axis, and all the air was sucked out of his lungs. It was her. Not the 2008 Dust Devil version. This was the 2023 version. Sienna Ray? In the flesh. Standing 50 feet from his garage. Looking directly at him. His first thought was an absurd one. She looks shorter in person. His second was pure, unadulterated panic. She saw him staring and gave a small, weary wave. "Hello? Are you open?" Her voice was exactly as he imagined it. A little smoky, a little tired. Eli forgot how to speak. He just nodded, his head feeling like a lead weight on his neck. "Great," she said, her shoulders slumping in relief. "My car. I think it just died." "Spectacularly?" He finally found a word. Yeah?" He cleared his throat, trying to sound like a competent professional and not a man whose entire world had just been put into a blender. "Yeah, I heard. Let me take a look." He walked toward the car, his legs feeling strangely disconnected from his body. Every instinct screamed at him. "Don't look at her. Look at the engine. You are a mechanic. This is just a car." But his eyes kept betraying him, flicking toward the woman standing beside the silver beast. It was surreal. He had spent more than a decade watching this face on screens big and small. Now she was standing right there, smelling faintly of vanilla and expensive perfume, looking at him with an expression of hopeful expectation. "It's going to be a while," he managed to say, after a quick look under the hood confirmed his fears. The coolant hose had burst. It was a mess. You can wait inside. In the office. If you want. Thank you, she said, the relief in her voice palpable. It's boiling out here. He led her toward the garage. And then, a cold, horrifying realization washed over him. The office. The office was not a separate room. The office was a corner of the main bay. The office was where he had his desk, his phone, his coffee maker, and the posters. All of them. Oh no. He wanted to tell her to wait outside. To sit on the curb. To go anywhere but in there. But his mouth was a desert. The words wouldn't form. He could only push open the door and gesture her inside, a condemned man leading his own executioner. She stepped in, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. She took in the cavernous space, the hulking shape of a half-disassembled Ford F-150 on the lift, the scattered tools, the smell of oil and old metal. And then her eyes found the walls. He saw the exact moment it registered. Her gaze flicked from one poster to the next. Her eyes widened slightly. She started with Dust Devil over his desk, then followed the trail. Celestial Echo, her big sci-fi hit. Manhattan Serenade, the rom-com he secretly loved. The Crimson Pact, her ill-fated spy thriller. On and on it went, a chronological tour of her life's work. Eli wanted the concrete floor to swallow him whole. He felt his face flush with a heat that had nothing to do with the summer sun. This was not admiration. This was a creepy, obsessive shrine. He was a stalker with a wrench set. She turned to him. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't disgust. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something quiet and analytical. You're a fan, she stated, a simple fact. Eli swallowed. Something like that, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. He couldn't look at her. He stared at a stain on the floor, wishing for a sudden, painless aneurysm. I'll get started on your car. He practically ran from the office, grabbing tools with trembling hands. He could feel her gaze on his back. He fumbled with the latch on the hood, his fingers clumsy and stupid. He was a joke. A walking, talking cliché of the creepy fanba. She was probably on her phone right now, calling security, or a therapist. He forced himself to focus. The engine. Just the engine. He found the split hose, a clean rupture. Easy fix if you had the part. Which he did not. This was a custom job, a high-performance import. He'd have to fabricate something. As he worked, he fell into his old habit. He started talking to the car. All right now, he murmured, his voice low and soothing, directed at the intricate web of wires and pipes. Let's see what we've got. She pushed you too hard, didn't she? Came up that long grade from the highway. You weren't breathing right. Feeling the pressure build up, but you couldn't say anything. He ran a gentle hand along a solid piece of the engine block. It's okay. It's just a little tear. A little stress fracture. We'll get you a new connection, something stronger. Something that can handle the heat. He wasn't talking to her. He was talking to the machine. It was how he worked. How he understood things. Every engine had a story, a personality. This one was proud and powerful, but neglected. It had been driven hard without any thought for its limits. From the corner of his eye, he saw her stand up from the rickety office chair. She walked slowly to the edge of the bay, stopping just outside the circle of light from his work lamp. She was listening. He fell silent, his face burning again. Mortified. First the posters, now this. The crazy mechanic who whispered sweet nothings to inanimate objects. But he had a job to do. He couldn't stop now. He took a deep breath and went back to work, his movements becoming more fluid, more confident as he lost himself in the task. He cut away the broken piece, measured a new length of high-pressure tubing, and began meticulously fitting it into place. He didn't speak again. He just worked. The silence in the garage was thick, broken only by the scrape of metal and the soft click of his tools. An hour later, it was done. A new, custom-fitted hose, stronger than the original. He filled the coolant, checked the levels, and wiped his hands on his rag. "All right," he said, his voice hoarse. He finally dared to look at her. "Give it a try." Sienna walked over to the driver's side, got in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a perfect, steady purr. No sputtering. No strain. It sounded healthier than it had when she'd left the city that morning. She got out of the car, a small, genuine smile on her face. "You're a magician." "Just a mechanic," he mumbled, looking at his boots. She paid him, the amount on the bill seeming ridiculously small for the miracle he just performed. There was an awkward pause. He expected her to bolt, to get away from the weirdo with the poster collection as fast as humanly possible. "Thank you, Eli," she said, having read the name on his grease-stained work shirt. "No problem, Miss Ray." She nodded, got into her car, and with a final, lingering look, she drove away, the sound of the perfectly tuned engine fading into the distance. Eli stood there for a long time, watching the empty road. Then he went back inside, closed the bay door, and leaned his head against the cool metal. He replayed the entire encounter. The posters. The way he mumbled and stammered. The way she caught him talking to her engine. He was an idiot. A complete and utter fool. He spent the rest of the day in a haze of self-loathing. He fixed the pickup truck's faulty brake line and changed the oil on a minivan, the mundane tasks a welcome distraction. But every time he looked up, her face looked back at him from the walls, her smile now feeling like a mocking judgment. He had met his hero. And he had made a complete fool of himself. The memory was a hot coal in his gut. He was convinced he'd never see her again, except on a screen, and that was probably for the best. Sienna drove, her hands loose on the wheel. The car felt different. Stronger. More responsive. It was humming with a contentment it hadn't possessed in years. Like it had been, understood. She couldn't stop thinking about the mechanic. Eli. She'd been on her way to a sterile spa resort, a trip mandated by her agent, Marcus, to de-stress, before the premiere of her new movie. A movie she secretly hated. A movie where the studio had sanded down all the rough edges, changed the ending, and turned her complex character into a bland, marketable caricature. She felt like that engine. Pushed too hard, a critical part ready to burst, surrounded by people who only cared about performance, not about soul. Then she walked into that garage. At first, the posters had startled her. It was a lot. But as she sat there, she realized it wasn't a random collage of her most famous roles. It was everything. Dust Devil was right over his desk. The one that made no money but had been the most honest work she'd ever done. He had posters for short films she'd forgotten she'd even made. It wasn't the creepy shrine of a fanatic. It was the careful collection of a historian. Someone who had paid attention. And then, he had talked to her car. He'd diagnosed its problem not as a failed part, but as a kind of neglect. A lack of empathy. His words, meant for the machine, had spoken directly to her. You weren't breathing right. Feeling the pressure build up, but you couldn't say anything. He wasn't a creep. He was authentic. More authentic than anyone she'd spoken to in a decade. He possessed a quiet, unassuming passion for his craft that she recognized, because she used to have it, too. Before Marcus. Before the studios. Before the brand. Sienna pulled over to the side of the road. She canceled her spa reservation. She turned the car around. She had a better idea. 3 days later, Eli was wrestling with the seized axle of an old tractor when the sound of an approaching vehicle made him look up. A black town car, the kind that whispered of money and importance, pulled silently to a stop in his gravel lot. Eli's heart sank. It was her lawyer. Or her security team. They were here to serve him with a restraining order. He wiped his hands, preparing for the worst. The back door opened, and Sienna Ray stepped out. She was dressed more casually this time, in jeans and a simple white t-shirt, but she still seemed to glow with an otherworldly luminescence. Eli's mouth went dry. "Hi, Eli," she said, her smile small and a little nervous. "Miss Ray," he croaked. Did I forget to tighten something?" She laughed, a genuine, musical sound. "No. The car is running better than ever. I came to give you this." She held out a thick, cream-colored envelope. Eli stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. He slowly reached out and took it. Inside was a heavy card. An invitation. It was for the world premiere of her new film, Northern Lights. 2 tickets. VIP access. He looked from the invitation to her face, his expression one of pure disbelief. I don't understand. The other day," she began, choosing her words carefully, "you reminded me of something. The way you care about your work. The honesty of it. It's rare." She gestured vaguely around the garage. "I'm surrounded by people who just want to keep the machine running. They don't care if it's breathing right. You do. I thought you should see the new one. As my guest." Eli felt a dizzying wave of vertigo. This wasn't happening. This was a dream he was having under the tractor. "Me? But I'm just a mechanic." "Exactly," she said softly. "Please say you'll come." The trip to Los Angeles was a blur. A rented tuxedo that felt like a cardboard costume. A flight that felt like being launched into space. A hotel room that was bigger than his entire house. Eli felt like a stray dog that had accidentally wandered into a palace. At the pre-premiere party, the feeling of being an imposter intensified. The air was thick with fake laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. He stood awkwardly by Sienna's side, a planet of denim and oil orbiting a star of silk and diamonds. A man with a slick, predatory smile and hair that looked sculpted from obsidian approached them. "Sienna, darling. You look breathtaking." He barely glanced at Eli. "Marcus, this is Eli," Sienna said, her voice a little tight. "The friend I told you about." Marcus gave Eli a dismissive, up-and-down look, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "Ah, yes. The mechanic. How quaint. Enjoy the free drinks, kid." He turned his back on Eli, pulling Sienna away to talk business. Eli was left standing alone, feeling about 2 inches tall. He was a prop. A curiosity. Sienna's pet project for the week. The humiliation from the garage came rushing back tenfold. He retreated to a corner, nursing a bottle of water, trying to make himself invisible. He overheard Marcus talking to a studio executive nearby, his voice a low, condescending hiss. "She's being emotional about the ending again," Marcus said, swirling his drink. "Thinks it betrays the character. I told her, darling, it tested through the roof. The audience wants a happy ending, not your depressing art house nonsense." The executive chuckled. "Just keep her on script for the red carpet. We need her to sell it, not critique it." A cold anger bloomed in Eli's chest. They didn't see her. They saw a product. A brand to be managed. They were the ones who drove engines too hard, who ignored the warning signs until something vital burst. Just before they were due to walk the red carpet, Sienna found him. Her smile was brittle, her eyes filled with a familiar exhaustion he'd seen 1,000 times in his own reflection. "I can't do this, Eli," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The movie, it's a lie. I feel like a fraud selling it." This was his moment. He could nod and offer a platitude. Or he could be the man who talked to engines. "Miss Ray." "Sienna," he started, his own voice shaky but clear. "When a classic car comes into my shop, the most important thing is the frame. The chassis. If that's not true, nothing you build on top of it matters. Your character in this movie, from what you've told me, she has a strong frame. But it sounds like the studio took off the original engine and dropped in a cheap, plastic replacement for the last 10 minutes. He looked her directly in the eye. "It's inauthentic. It's wrong. It disrespects the soul of the machine. Your fans, your real fans, we don't come to see the plastic. We come to see the soul." Sienna stared at him, her eyes wide. All the anxiety seemed to melt away from her face, replaced by a look of fierce clarity. His simple, earnest analogy had cut through the noise. He hadn't tried to be a Hollywood insider. He had just been Eli. She took a deep breath and squeezed his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. On the red carpet, a reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Sienna! The buzz is amazing! What are you most proud of with this film?" Sienna smiled, but it was a new smile. It was the smile from the Dust Devil poster. She ignored the frantic hand signals from Marcus just off camera. "I'm proud that we started a conversation about artistic integrity," she said, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. "And I hope it inspires audiences to always demand stories with soul, not just a shiny finish." She glanced over at Eli, who stood just out of the spotlight, and gave him a small, conspiratorial wink. Weeks later, Eli was back in his garage, the memory of Hollywood already feeling like a strange, vivid dream. The rented tux was gone, replaced by his familiar, grease-stained overalls. The roar of the red carpet had been replaced by the chirping of crickets. It was good to be home. He was tightening a bolt on an old pickup when a familiar, perfect purr sounded in his driveway. He looked up to see the silver sports car pull to a stop. Sienna got out, holding a rolled-up poster. She walked into the bay, her smile easy and warm. "I brought you something." She unrolled the poster. It was for Dust Devil. It was old, a little faded, identical to the one hanging over his desk. "I thought this wall needed one more," she said, gesturing to an empty space. Then she did something strange. She handed him a black marker. "I need you to sign it." Eli blinked. "Sign your poster?" "Yes," she said simply. He stared at her, then at the face of the young woman on the poster who had inspired him for so long. He understood. This was not a job offer or a ticket to another world. It was something better. It was respect. An acknowledgement that his passion, his authenticity, had value. With a hand that trembled only slightly, he took the marker and wrote his name in the bottom corner. Eli Vance. Sienna took the marker back from him. She knelt down and, just below his name, she wrote a simple, elegant inscription. To Eli. The mechanic who got me home safe. In more ways than one. Eli felt a hot sting behind his eyes, and he didn't bother to hide the tears that welled up. He had spent his life admiring a star from afar, never dreaming that she would one day see the light in him. In the quiet of his garage, surrounded by his work and her history, the fan and the idol were no more. They were just two people who had, against all odds, helped each other find their way back to something real.